Okay, that brings us really nicely, sort of moving up to date, because Shia has been quite a hit with the fans.
It has, hasn't it?
And so, just from my experience of Solstice is not really knowing much. I've worked with Andy for a good number of years, and vaguely knew that he was. In fact, it was quite disparaging of Solstice when he first mentioned it to me. He said, "You would never have heard of it. There's a band called Solstice. Can we move on, please?" Almost. We talk about something else, and I kind of knew that he had the band going, and then of course then COVID hit. So what was that whole experience like for you? With first of all with the pandemic coming along, and then I presume if you talk us through, how Andy contacted you and how the whole, how your whole involvement with the current album Sheer got going.
Yeah, it was great. Well, the thing is, funnily enough, in that first lockdown, whereas I know lots of people around in the country and of course around the world were having a terrible time of it, for me personally, it wasn't that bad. I still had a job, which had, my teaching job, which suddenly meant that I just could do it from home, and I still had, I had someone staying with me at the time, so it wasn't too bad, and suddenly we had this time to do, and the facilities, of course, to create a new album without actually meeting up at all. And so it was all done through suddenly, you just get a bunch of files, as we call them, the stems. It's all the parts that Andy had in mind for a new track, sometimes with his voice on it, sometimes, and then later it would arrive with Jess's voice on it, with lots of worked out harmonies. And of course Jess was new, and I hadn't met her at that point at all. It was crazy. But it just meant that all I would do is listen to this stuff this music he was giving to me, and try and weave in some ideas, So either by using this was the first time the lovely melodica was used. Melodica turned up because I'd actually been working with Pete quite a lot, actually, on his album the year before, and put a lot of melodica down on that. And Andy had obviously had produced Pete's album and loved the melodica, and so put some melodica on. So I'd put melodica all over these things, and then I tried all these different ideas, on what he was presenting, and then Andy then just sent it all back through WeTransfer, and because I've got the recording set up myself, and other people in the band have a similar situation, that's how it did. We were able to record ourselves well and send all the ideas over, and then Andy would sort of sift through them all and pick out the ones he liked and create, and then suddenly it would all return and he'd go, "Oh, could you do something slightly different on this one, or could you, I like what you're doing here, but what about this?" And that's how it evolved, and it was all done through WhatsApp, messages, and these files arriving, and that's how it happened, and it was brilliant. So everybody, and we all had time, you see, because of the fact that there was, couldn't really do much else, couldn't go out, couldn't, do any of that stuff. We had time to sit down and actually really work with these things, and it was great.
Were you aware that you were making an album? Or was
yes, absolutely. And we also were aware that it was the 40th anniversary of the beginning of Solstice. You see, that's the point. So we were totally aware that we were making an album. I don't think I had a name at that time, but anyway, yeah. So, but yes, without a doubt, we knew that this was what the idea was, that we were going to get an album. But I've got to be honest, it has come out remarkably well, and I think, I know everybody's put their work in, and without a doubt that everybody has, stepped up to the mark. But I'm just blown away by what Andy has achieved, pulling it all together, and not only that, the promotion of it, and it's brilliant, the best thing ever, it's best, without a doubt, it's the most successful thing that's happened since I've been in Solstice, and so that's really saying something.
What are your thoughts on other people's reactions?
I'm amazed. I mean, everyone absolutely loves it, and it's not just the proggers either. You know, obviously the old fans love it, but it's not just them. I'm giving it to people, I'm letting people hear it that would really not be interested in Solstice at all, who are going, oh, this is really nice, isn't it? I mean, even my own sister had a little tear. My sister's the last person who's interested in this kind of stuff, you know. That's not her style of music at all, you know. But so I am quite surprised at how well everybody loves it.
Why do you think it's got a wider appeal compared to previous Solstice work?
It is interesting. And I don't have a strong opinion about this. I just have a theory, I guess, you know. I think, first of all, it's contemporary. I think a lot of other Solstice stuff, this is not to denigrate the previous music, because I love the previous music. And the previous music is very proggy, I think. It's got the roots, the prog roots are very obvious, I think, a lot of the previous Solstice, you know. This is less so. I think this is more, there's a modern edge to it. You know, in fact, one of the tracks, I'm thinking about like Seven Dreams, almost when it arrived, it was Steely Dan. You know, it's like a very kind of jazzy almost, you know, very different. There is a lot of vocal. I think that Jess has done a remarkable job because she helped develop the vocals. I think that's what's happened, and because Jess is also a creative musician in her own right. She is, you know, she creates her own music, and I've heard some of it, and it's brilliant. You know, so she really does know what she's doing. She's not just a singer. Yeah, does that make sense? She doesn't just come across as plays all these instruments. She gets what creativity. How to put things together in a creative way, which is a very different thing to the way, you know, many musicians are brilliant at what they do, but they don't necessarily create. Does that make sense? You know, but she does, and so she's built the vocals, and I think that vocals appeal to a much wider audience. You know,
if you were going to describe the style of music of Sheer and Solstice to someone who'd never heard Solstice before, what references would you make? I know you've done a little.
Well, that's a very good question. I find that quite hard to do, actually, because I tend not even to. I don't even do that with many music. So, or should I say, I hear things in music that other people don't necessarily hear. And they go, "There's nothing like that." You know, it's like, well, I think it is. But you know, it's interesting. I tell you what's really interesting. We've had one really bad review. And everything that the person said in the review, I can understand where they were coming from. They said, it sounds like the Carpenters. Yeah, it does. Some parts of it sound like the Carpenters. But can I just say, everybody, the Carpenters are brilliant. I mean, we were, even when I was a kid and we were into prog, we all loved the Carpenters because they were brilliant. Okay, they were middle of the road. And, you know, and if you're into kind of, yes, but I'm into prog, I don't like the Carpenters. Of course, well, you haven't been listening, because the Carpenters were full of vocals, full of really well put together music, you know. So, yeah, if you're going to criticise Sia for being like the Carpenters, I'm sorry, you've really missed the point. The Carpenters are great, and I would say to you, yes, there's loads of incredible vocals on the Sia, yeah? But there's loads of incredible vocals on a lot of music that don't necessarily sound like prog. Do you know what I mean? You know, there's a lot of stuff everywhere. Blues, isn't there? And soul music has lots of great vocals. Sia has a lot of soul. You know, there's a lot of other stuff going on presently that Sia, there's a lot of groove, loads of groove. And I'm afraid to say a lot of modern prog doesn't have that much groove. It's kind of clever, isn't it? You know, But you'll find that on this new music, on Sia, there's a lot of weird time signatures, but I bet you don't even notice them. You know, one of the songs that's the most difficult to perform, which is, which one is it called? Sorry, I forgot what it's called. Yeah, it's Stand Up, isn't it? Oh, goodness. Just flows beautifully, and anyone listening to it just says, oh, that's a nice little tune, isn't it? Yeah, read it. Yeah, just look at the music, which I've had to create in order that I can even learn it. It's like every step there's a change in time signature all the way through 6, 5, 7. It goes like this. It's all over the place, but it just doesn't sound like it because it grooves, and it's got that kind of lilt, which a lot of prog doesn't have, but a lot, I'd say, jazz has that, and a lot of soul has that, and a lot of really good music that, R&B has that. That's where, so I think our music fits in with all these other styles really nicely. It's not hip-hop, of course it isn't. But I bet you if you could take one of those backing tracks, I bet hip-hop would love to take one of those backing tracks and put something to it. It's got a... It fits in with a lot of things. It's, dare I say it, in places almost poppy. And one or two of the tracks, like Love Is Coming, is so commercial. It's so commercial. It's got beautiful melodies. Beautiful. What's the word? A beautiful sentiment. It appeals to everybody. That's the one. My sister, who likes 80s pop music, is in tears over because it's got such a lovely sentiment. Love Is Coming. But hey guys, it's in 5/4. Did you notice that? When you try to dance to it, did it feel a bit weird? You don't even notice that it's in some weird time signature. Do you know what I mean? Because it's got a beautiful... It's just a beautiful thing. Lovely chords, lovely melody, all the rest of it. So I think that Sia just... I think it... Be honest, it's not just prog. Oh, sorry, I just kicked your microphone. It's not just prog. Yeah. It's not just prog, is it? Let's face it. I mean, you like it, and you're not into prog. I'm the nutter in the band. You do realise this, don't you? A position that I now I used to try and run away from, but now I actually cultivate it.
You embrace.
I embrace and cultivate.
Nice one. So making how do you go about the lockdown videos that they were?
Oh, that was so funny. But I was really lucky, I've got to admit, because at the time I had Phoenix staying with me. Now Phoenix has very much been Solstice's official photographer. So you'll see all of the shots that we're all standing on stones. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen those. Phoenix came and did that. He's just a brilliant, probably one of the best photographers I've ever seen. Every shot he takes is iconic. We've got an absolute. He's brilliant, and he's one of my best friends in the world. One of my very, very close friends in the world. So he was staying here because he had a few other housing difficulties, and so whenever I set my stuff up in order to make suddenly what would happen is that Andy would say, right, we're going to make this video all at home. Just set your phone up and record it. But I had Phoenix come and do my filming with some flash. Some flash lens that he could zoom right in, and everything was like, narrow depth of field and all this kind of stuff. And he'd move around, and as I was recording, so it was only the very last recording for what was it? It was for stand up that I had to do it myself. But prior to that, he'd helped me record all that filming. One I do know that one of the tracks, I think it's for Long Gone if I remember rightly, Andy brought around a green screen that I had to set up and sit in front of because he was using morphing, I believe, wasn't he?
Yeah,
morphing.
yeah.
So I had to use a green screen. But yes, it was great fun. And of course, but you did really have to learn the stuff because otherwise, as you played, it just didn't look right,
Yeah. So the next step after the lockdown videos, I suppose, once you've made the album, it was, tell me your thoughts about getting ready, all meeting up again for the rehearsal sessions.
It was so exciting, and because we really hadn't been able to. I think I met Jess actually on that photo shoot that had happened last summer, and then since then, and which was lovely, really nice, such a nice person. And we'd all got on really well, and that was really good. But we were socially distancing even then, because it was all outside and we couldn't meet indoors. And then I know that you made a film, didn't you, at the Christmas time? But at that point, everything was so bad, and I was shielding. I was actually very vulnerable because I've got certain conditions that made me particularly vulnerable to this. So I just had to pull out of that, and it was so sad, because I'd love to have been part of that film. But so the whole year had gone, and then of course it was. I got me vaccinations, and and suddenly felt much safer. And then we got together in June, and it was so exciting and so wonderful. And this band is very, very special because not only is it creating extraordinarily good music, you can't fault that, but it's just the people in it are so lovely and such good friends, such close friends. I know them all so well, And then to find that we've got a new singer, Jess, who just, I don't know how she did it, slotted straight in, even though she's half the age of most of the others in the band. She's younger than all of my kids. That's ridiculous, isn't it? And then she brings in these three lovely girls to do the backing vocals, who also fitted in immediately, even though they're only just a bit older than my granddaughter. That's absurd, And it was, but suddenly, bang, there it all was again. It's just this, you're all in the room, there's no bad feelings anywhere. There's none of that kind of apparent things that musicians are supposed to do where they all fight amongst each other. There's none of that at all. It's the absolute reverse. We all just, there's so much love in that room. It's wonderful. And we've, to say the core of the band have known each other since 95. And some before that, clearly. And we're all so close, and it's just great to sit down. To be honest, if all of the gigs are now cancelled because of, let's say there was a fourth wave, so all the gigs get cancelled, I'm still just going and rehearsing everything together with everybody, and that process of doing that and spending those few days doing it on our little secret gig at the end of it in the Crawford, it's all been worth it, even if it was just for that, because it's so exciting, so wonderful. It's when we do get together, it's like these high points in life. I'm not, guys, I'm sorry to break it to you, but I'm not normally a rock star, But all of a sudden, you're in this room with fabulous musicians, sensitive people, playing really, really brilliant music with, and enjoying every second of it. It's I can't tell you how good it is. Seriously, it's like a spiritual experience, with this band. I do every time I'm there. I just thank my lucky stars that I'm in part of this wonderful team, because it's unusual. It's extraordinarily unusual in the music world